June 6, 1996, Rowlett, Texas. Two small boys and their mother are sleeping in the family room for the night. The mother wakes, and a man in dark clothing and a baseball hat is standing at her feet. In a frenzy, she screams and runs through her house after him. When she turns on the lights, she sees that both of her children have been mortally wounded. But when local police and EMS arrive, the scene was more than they were capable of handling. And now, 27 years later, it's unclear if anyone will ever know who murdered little Devon and Damon. This is the story of Darlie Routier, guilty or innocent on death row. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Pottorff. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends in Greece.
Yes.
Kalosi latte.
Awesome.
I have no idea if that was right or not.
It sounded really impressive.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all that matters.
So for my Greek friends, my apologies.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to like, rate, and review. That helps other people to find us.
Yes, it does.
Subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. That might be on YouTube.
Yep.
That might be on a podcast platform.
And people seem to be enjoying the YouTube.
Yeah, we're having some fun.
Yeah, they get to see our mugs on there.
Yes, they do. And I always say we're having fun. No matter what we're doing, we're enjoying ourselves. So,
Yep.
And if you want to have fun like us,
Yeah.
all you have to do is go to Facebook and join the In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions, and you're in. And I just want to remind you that if you suggest it or invite other people who are your friends, they still have to answer the question.
Yes, answer the question.
Yes.
We're not asking a lot.
No. I did this case 4 years ago, and I got hate mail when I did this case 4 years
Really?
ago. Yes, people have very strong opinions about this case. And my wish is just to give you all the details and allow you to decide, but I'm going to tell you right up front, just like this case in 1996 is very skewed in one direction,
All right.
I might have trouble keeping my opinions to myself.
Okay.
But it is our true crime podcast, so if you have a different opinion on how to interpret this evidence, then go for it.
Yeah.
That's all I can say about it.
Yeah.
Last week was the 27th anniversary of these murders. We've had requests to cover it again, so here we are. This is not a short story at all. There's a lot of pieces. I'm going to try to get through as much of it as I can. I don't want to hang everybody on a ledge forever.
Yeah.
So we did it in one episode.
Right.
Before we get started, I want to thank some sources: Murderpedia, Wikipedia, ABC News 2020, darlieroutier.org, Texas Monthly, investigatinginnocence.org, darliefacts.com, the Facebook group Fight for Darlie Routier, ABC's 2020 The Last Defense, Texas Monthly, the University of Michigan School of Law National Registry of Exonerations, and darlieroutierunsolved.com.
That's a lot of research.
There's a lot out there. There are books, tons of websites, you name it, on this case.
All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
All right, let's do it.
Darlie Lynn Peck was born on January 4th, 1970 in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Her parents are Larry Peck and Darlie Key, and yes, both she and her mother are both named Darlie.
Okay.
Her parents divorced when she's 7, and a year later her mom remarried a man named Dennis Stahl. She's the oldest of a pack of girls, 2 biological and 2 stepsisters.
Gotcha.
And when Darlie's in her teens, she leaves Altoona with her parents and sisters, and the whole lot of them moved to Lubbock, Texas.
They loaded up the truck and they moved to Lubbock, Texas.
That's right. Her parents fight a lot, and eventually they divorce. Her mom finds work at a Western Sizzlin' restaurant.
There you go.
She works there as a waitress. Also working at the same Sizzlin' or Sizzler. Is it Sizzlin' or Sizzler?
Sizzler.
down to the Sizzler, she's working at the Sizzler, is 17-year-old Darren Routier. Darren is a cook and part-time manager. Now, Mama Darlie thinks Darren is smart, he's good-looking, she thinks he's got a bright future.
Right.
She plays matchmaker.
Okay.
Darren meets Mama Darlie's 15-year-old daughter, Darlie Lynn, a little bleach blonde cutie with a great body.
Okay, 15?
She's 15, he's 17.
Oh, okay.
And Darlie and Darren fall in love.
Okay.
Now, Darlie attends Monterey High School in Lubbock, and Darren is going away to study at a technical college in Dallas.
All right.
Now, there's no doubt about it, Darlie likes attention. She's a typical late 80s girl with big hair and makeup, and she's in the South, which is the home of big hair.
The mall hair.
And makeup. The higher the hair, the closer to Jesus.
There you go.
When Darlie graduates in May of 1988, she moves to Dallas to be with Darren, taking a job with the computer chip company where Darren has been hired as a technician.
Okay.
And in August of 1988, she and Darren are married. She's 18, he's 20.
Starting early.
And they are starting early. Now, according to Darlie's mother, these two get pregnant on their honeymoon because about 9 months later, their first son, Devon Rush Routier, is born on June 14th, 1989 in Dallas, Texas.
Are we sure it wasn't a shotgun wedding?
Don't know, but her
Okay.
mom says it's a honeymoon baby.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, who cares?
2 years after that, on February 19th, 1991, their second child, Damon Christian, is born. Now, somewhere in here, Darren leaves his job at the computer chip company and starts his own company testing computer chips or electronic components called Testneek, which I thought was kind of funny, like unique, Testneek.
Yeah.
When they first opened their company, the two of them are really successful. Darlie did his books, and these two have really never had money before, and suddenly they're making it hand over fist, and they're doing really well.
Okay.
They built a new house in the neighborhood of Dalrock Heights Addition, 5801 Eagle Drive in Rowlett, Texas, which is an affluent suburb of Dallas.
Nice.
Now, Darlie loved this house. She called it the Home Alone house because they thought it looked like the one in the movie.
Gotcha.
One of Rob's favorite scenes, the spider.
That is the most phenomenal cinematic scream in
That's
the history.
the best piece of acting ever.
That is the best scream. I love that. I die every time I hear that. It's just fantastic.
Also in 1992, Darren buys a 1982 Jaguar and a 30-foot cabin cruiser. Buys himself a boat.
Wow.
And Darlie underwent breast augmentation and bought herself some nice jewelry.
They're just loading them up.
They're just two kids who didn't have much, and they made it big and really didn't know how to handle their newfound wealth very well.
Sure.
There were lots of trips, and they spent a lot. And all of this made me kind of curious. And did you know 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt in 5 years or less?
Is that right?
Because they've never had money, and they go a little crazy. This is according to CNBC.
Wow. Now, we never did that when we won the lottery. Oh, wait. I wasn't supposed to say that, was I? Just kidding.
We have not won the lottery.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, financial managers would be involved.
Yeah, exactly. Immediately, if not sooner.
And I promise, if we win the lottery, Lord, if we win the lottery, we'll do good with all that money.
But you'll never know about
it. You're bad.
I know.
Now, some people claimed that Darlie loved to show off. She showed off in order to cover up her low self-esteem. She was materialistic, almost to the point of bizarre, according to some people.
In what way?
Well, when she got her breast implants, she opted for double E's.
Wow. Well, like they say, everything's bigger in Texas.
Yes, it is. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Oh, man.
But when she bought clothes that were revealing. She bought clothes that were a little flashy. She's just an 80s girl out wearing red lipstick and getting her nails painted. And I read in Texas Monthly, she's not unlike many women in that Dallas area that dress that way. A lot of them dress that way.
Okay, with double E's, right?
And she does have double E's. Rob, just get your head out of the gutter. Get off the double E's.
I just can't even get over that.
Well, you're going to have to because we're moving on.
Okay.
In 1995, little Drake is born. They now have 3 boys, 6 and under. Now, here's the problem. The Routiers are living beyond their means, but no one knows this at the time. They were like the perfect neighbors, everybody, their friends, everybody thought they were just the perfect little family. Darlie would bake cookies for the kids in the neighborhood, and Darlie and Darren even helped out a cancer patient with her mortgage payment.
Oh, wow. Nice.
All the while, they're going in debt because Darren's business has started to operate at a loss. He's not making the money he used to.
I wonder why.
I don't know.
Well, I'm going to guess that, technology is incremental. And maybe he was kind of getting left behind because technology gets smarter.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Who
He's
knows?
a small company, could have been taken over by somebody big who was doing the same job he was.
Exactly.
But by the summer of 1996, Darren and Darlie are behind on their own mortgage. And they've got $12,000 in credit card debt, and they owe the IRS $10,000 in back taxes.
And that's a lot of money back in the 80s.
And in addition to these financial woes, by 1996, they have this new baby, and they're at each other's throats.
Wow.
Darlie can't lose her baby weight. She starts taking diet pills, on top of which Darlie's suffering from a little bit of postpartum depression. And their marriage is in chaos.
Yeah.
Darlie keeps a diary. She writes all of these things down, including her thoughts about suicide in a May entry from 1996.
Whoa.
Quote, Devon, Damon, and Drake, I hope you will forgive me for what I am about to do. My life has been such a hard fight for a long time, and I just can't find the strength to keep fighting anymore. I love you 3 more than anything else in this world, and I want all 3 of you to be healthy and happy, and I don't want you to see a miserable person every time you look at me, end quote.
Wow.
Now, if that's not postpartum depression, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's severe.
By June 1996, Darren has applied for and been rejected for a $5,000 loan because of what they owed and their inability to pay.
Sure.
Darren has also asked his ex-father-in-law about staging a break-in in their home so they could file a false insurance claim.
Really? Wow. He's desperate.
Tisk, tisk, Darren.
Shouldn't do that.
According to friends and family, Darlie and Darren were loving, doting parents. But on the night of June 6, 1996, Darlie, Devon, and Damon decide to sleep in the family room. It's like a little camp out in the family room.
Yeah.
And Mom's sleeping on the couch. School was finally out, and I think they had a brand new big screen TV.
Okay.
Because they owe $12,000 in credit card debt and $10,000 to the IRS. Not a good move.
It was probably a plasma screen that weighed about 900 pounds.
I don't know what it was,
Just
but
saying.
I'm pretty sure they had a new TV. I've seen an interview with her about that.
Gotcha.
At 2:31 a.m., the night dispatcher for the Rowlett Police Department, Doris Trammell, takes a 911 call. On the line is a hysterical Darlie Routier. She's screaming, quote, somebody broke into our house. They just stabbed me and my children. Doris does her best to calm Darlie down, but it's honestly not working. I've heard this call, y'all. I listened to it. It's bad. Darlie is losing her mind, as you might imagine.
Sure.
Darlie is screaming, quote, my little boys are dying. Oh my God, my babies are dying, end quote.
Wow.
I will post a link to this 911 call in the show notes and in the In-Laws and Outlaws. You can listen to it yourself.
Okay.
Doris stays on the phone with Darlie and calls for emergency backup. Darlie is saying through sobs, quote, while I was sleeping, me and my little boys were sleeping downstairs. Someone came in, stabbed my baby, stabbed me. I woke up. I was fighting. He ran out through the garage. He threw the knife down, end quote. Now, in the meantime, Darlie's scream wakes up Darren, who's sleeping upstairs with the baby. He rushes downstairs, sees both Devon and Damon on the floor, covered in blood, and Darlie in a nightshirt that is also covered in blood. And she's shouting into the phone, and Darlie has been stabbed too. Darren rushes to the boys and finds that Devon has 2 huge gashes in his chest. He checks for a pulse, and he finds nothing. Devon's eyes are open. He thinks he's dead. Darren then looks to Damon, who has his back to the room. He's on his stomach. There's blood on the back of his shorts, and he's struggling to breathe. He is still alive.
Okay.
Officer David Waddell is first on the scene, and this man is shook. He is not prepared for this night. Don't know who would be prepared for this night.
Of course.
He assesses the situation, realizing that Devon is dead. He yells at Darlie to sit down, but Darlie is putting wet towels on Damon's stab wounds to apply pressure. She goes to the sink, she wets these towels, and then she applies pressure to the boys, all while screaming that they're dying. And remember, she's been stabbed too, and she's losing blood.
And where's she been stabbed?
In the neck. We're going to get to that in just a second.
Okay.
And the arm.
Okay.
Officer Waddell apparently isn't doing anything during this time. Later, he's going to say that Darlie didn't care if her children lived or died.
Really?
Yes. All I can say is listen to the 911 call.
Okay.
If you're a mom, go listen to the 911 call.
Okay.
By this time, Officer Waddell is joined by Sergeant Matthew Walling and the EMS crew, who immediately radioed for backup because the two of them could not handle two children who were either dead or dying and a woman covered in blood with a gash across her throat and one to her arm that was down to the bone.
Ew.
Very quickly, Officer Waddell tells Sergeant Walling what he knows, and they follow a path of blood from the family room to the attached garage, which connects through the kitchen and a laundry room. Very normal for most houses. They have like a mud room and a laundry room.
Yeah.
Then they move into the garage and find nothing. Nada. What they did see was that the screen on a side window of the garage had been visibly slashed in the center. And the police start checking all through the house, everywhere, while the EMS teams take care of the boys and Darlie. And when they realize that no one is in the house except for this little baby, Drake, upstairs, they go back to the kitchen where the intruder was to have fled from. Mm-hmm. This is according to Darlie.
Right.
And they take note of the mess in the kitchen. The tiled floor is splattered with blood. There's a vacuum cleaner on its back. There's broken glass on the floor. And on the counter next to a pile of expensive jewelry and a closed purse, both are Darlie's, is a bloody butcher knife.
And the jewelry wasn't taken and the purse. Okay.
Undisturbed.
Gotcha.
Now, when they don't find anybody in the house or the backyard, Darlie asks, according to Officer Waddell, if any of her jewelry had been stolen. And when Officer Waddell looks to the bloody knife, Darlie says that she had touched it and even goes so far to say, my fingerprints are on it now. Maybe we could have gotten the fingerprint of the intruder.
All right.
Now, it makes her sound like she's trying to already give herself...
Yeah, a little wiggle room.
Yes. But she says this because the 911 operator specifically tells her, don't touch anything. And she screams, but I already touched the knife.
Gotcha.
The paramedics trying to save Damon, they notice that both boys have huge gashes in their chests. The wounds had penetrated their lungs. They kept up their life-saving measures on Damon the entire way to the Baylor Medical Center, but Damon was dead on arrival. Darlie is packed up and also taken to the Baylor Medical Center. But before she goes, she tells Officer Walling what she told Officer Waddell earlier. An intruder came into her home. She woke up to find him on top of her. They struggled. He ran out through the garage where he dropped a knife. She picked it up and came back into the family room. And it's only then that she notices that her children have been butchered. She tells Walling and Waddell that she heard nothing of the attack on the boys. She does describe the attacker as a man of medium to tall height, dressed in all black, t-shirt, jeans, and a baseball cap with shoulder-length hair.
Okay.
Now, when Darlie gets to the hospital, she undergoes surgery to repair the gash across her neck, which, by the way, is 2 millimeters from her carotid artery. 2 millimeters.
Wow.
Now, I talked about this the last time I did this podcast. 2 millimeters is the size of one piece of uncooked spaghetti.
Jeez.
She also had a stab wound in her forearm that is so deep, like I said, it's all the way down to the bone.
Wow.
And according to the attending doctor that night, Darlie is really starting to bruise along her arms and wrists. He said she looked like she'd been fighting for her life.
Okay.
Darren follows behind to the hospital, but neighbors help out because this man named Tom Neal is going to drive Darren, who was too shaken up to drive on his own, and Tom's wife stayed behind to care for little Drake.
Okay.
But before Darren leaves his house, where his 2 children and his wife have been attacked, he sees all these cop cars and the EMS and the news, They've all started to gather, and according to police, he says, quote, "Golly, I guess this is the biggest thing Rowlett's ever had," end quote. And later, Sergeant Walling would say, quote, "The man had 2 of his children slaughtered tonight, and he's acting like the damn circus is in town," end quote.
Yeah, that was a strange thing to say. But once again, I mean, when somebody's in shock or they've had a traumatic experience, you just don't know how you're going to react.
Very true.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
Near the house, the police have found a blood-soaked sock. It's in the alley behind the Routier's home, 75 yards away. They then unleash the K-9 unit, and the police, who've grown in numbers, they start searching the neighborhood.
Right.
And Jimmy Patterson, a veteran of the Crimes Against Persons Division, shows up on the scene. Veteran. I use that word loosely because in this sleepy town of Rowlett, that just meant that he'd been a detective for 8 years and he had investigated maybe 5 or 6 homicides, including the one he was staring at on the night of June 6, 1996.
So basically he won by default.
I'm just saying it's a sleepy town. There's not a whole lot of this that ever happens in Rowlett, Texas.
Right, right.
They walk the house, and when they make it upstairs, this white Pomeranian loses its mind, starts barking, yapping, even bites on the pant leg of one of the men. The neighbor who's there to watch over Drake pulls the dog away. The dog's name is Domain.
Okay.
So they all have D names.
Okay.
Even the dog.
All right.
And the officers are saying, you know, where was this dog earlier? Why wasn't he barking earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the neighbor lady says he doesn't like anybody. This dog doesn't like anybody.
Yeah.
Well, I think the dog was in the room with Darren and the baby.
Okay.
And please know, it was very quiet I think it was very quiet in that house because Darren doesn't hear anything and neither does the dog.
Okay. But I mean, when Scotty's upstairs in his bed in the den, which is a great distance away, I always have a bowl of peanuts down here, shelled peanuts, and I can crack a peanut and he's down here immediately. I have no idea how he hears that.
Because Scotty is a mental giant. Just ask us. We have the best dog ever.
We do. Cracks me up.
I'm kidding.
Yes.
At the hospital, Jimmy Patterson is waiting for Darlie to come out of surgery. And he's at her bedside, and he wants to ask her what happened. And Jimmy is later going to say that Darlie was alert and conscious, and that she, quote, knew exactly what she was saying, end quote.
Okay.
Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever had any type of surgery or trauma, like finding your 2 children dead, and you've got the remnants of anesthesia and some Demerol for pain and some Phenergan for nausea on board, you don't know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
But anybody who's ever witnessed or suffered real trauma knows that you don't know what you're saying or what you're thinking, let alone right out of surgery on multiple medications that make you drowsy.
Yeah.
This is actually called dissociative amnesia, and it's been linked to traumatic events like war, abuse, accidents, disasters, like Darlie had just witnessed.
Okay.
But according to Jim Patterson, Darlie was alert and she knew exactly what she was saying.
Okay.
Take that for what you will.
Yeah.
Darlie tells him what happened, how she was awakened by Damon pushing on her shoulder, saying, "Mommy." She saw the intruder, followed him, saw him drop the knife. She picked it up, and when she saw her boys, then she realized she was also bleeding, and lo and behold, it's a little different than the first story she told the police.
Okay.
In fact, there's going to be more than one story from Darlie.
Okay.
Darlie first says she woke up and there was a guy on top of her and there was a struggle. Then she says she woke up to a man standing at the edge of the couch, at the end of the couch, walking away from her toward the kitchen.
Right.
Then she says Damon woke her up, pushing on her shoulder and saying, "Mommy." And another time she will say she woke up because she heard the sound of breaking glass. One time she says she fought with the intruder, and another she said she can't remember if she fought with the intruder. So which one is true?
Right.
Or are they all true? I'm going to interject my own theory, and I don't think I read it anywhere. I think Darlie was drugged.
Really?
Everyone has said, how do you sleep next to your children while they're being murdered? And I just kept thinking, chloroform.
Yeah.
She's asleep and someone puts a rag over her mouth. I don't know, because when she wakes, she's really fuzzy.
Right.
I don't know. That's just what I keep seeing in my head. I could be dead wrong.
Yeah, I'm starting to draw some conclusions here, but I'm going to wait.
Yeah. Well, it's important to note that while at the hospital, Detective Patterson isn't taking notes during this bedside interrogation.
Okay.
His co-worker, Detective Chris Frosch, is writing things down. Or is he? There is no video recording. There's no tape recording. They're taking her statement and not recording it.
Really?
This would be really handy, don't you think?
Yeah.
Now, Detective Patterson is keeping it all up in his noggin, and he's trusting Detective Frosch to get it all down.
Wow.
These notes will never make it into Detective Patterson's file on the case. Never. Detective Patterson is in charge of this case, and according to the public record and the court testimony, after they left the hospital, there are no records of her answers that night.
See, I'm even skeptical when a waiter won't write down my order. I can't imagine a policeman not. That's just silly.
True.
Yeah.
And there are very few handwritten notes. It's all from memory.
Wow.
He asked her things like, was he wearing a belt? And was he wearing a fitted baseball cap or an adjustable one? What?
Okay, whatever.
What?
There's some hard-hitting investigation right there.
How do you notice if it's a fitted baseball hat or one that's got like the snaps or has to be adjusted in the back?
Oh,
to me, that's crazy. Was he wearing a belt?
Wow.
She tells him this is what he had on. Black hat, nothing on it. Black shirt, nothing on it. Was he wearing a belt? I don't know.
Jeez.
Well, then there probably wasn't a guy actually in the house.
Wow. Okay.
That's called foreshadowing.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
He asks her other things like, did he have scars or tattoos? Those are actually good questions to ask.
Those are typical.
And she says no. He asks her about her jewelry, and she could describe her jewelry, according to him, really well and where it was in the house. You know what? So can I.
Yeah.
I put my jewelry in the same place every single night, and maybe Darlie did too.
Sure.
And why wouldn't she know what jewelry she actually owned? Because I bet if Detective Patterson had a gun collection, he'd be able to describe that even if he had been traumatized.
Right.
He'd be able to say, oh, I had this gun and that gun and this gun.
And this is where I kept them, and yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think they treated her very nicely.
Right.
The police search for evidence to corroborate Darlie's story.
All right.
Here we go. Enter James Cron, a crime scene consultant. And that is a term that I use so loosely.
Okay.
It's looser than the change in the bottom of your couch.
And that's pretty loose.
And that's pretty loose. He does a walkthrough of their home where he only observes. Then James Cron unilaterally decides that someone inside the home is the killer.
Okay.
And from that moment on, they really didn't look into anything else or work the case from any other angle.
Amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Cron.
Yeah.
Cron says, in the family room, Darlie says she's attacked on the couch because she wakes from there covered in blood, but there's really no blood on the couch. She hears the glass break, and then she said she ran through the kitchen, but her bloody footprints are under the broken glass on the ground. There's only one bloody boot print, and the blood ends there.
Okay.
There's no blood in the garage where Darlie says the intruder fled. And if this was a robbery, why didn't they take Darlie's expensive jewelry or her purse that are all sitting on the kitchen counter?
True.
Now, there's no more evidence outside other than this sock that is 75 yards away from the house.
All right.
There are no footprints from the window that was slashed. And according to the police, the dust on the windowsill was undisturbed.
Okay.
They say in the report that the mulch surrounding the fence area there and the window, there are no footprints. And that the fence gate was closed so tightly, it's held together by wire. So this intruder couldn't have made his way out that way.
Right.
And the garage also showed no sign of a hasty exit. So police look at Darren.
That's what I was thinking before.
Yeah. They'd start to look at Darren. But that is their official assessment of the scene. And we're going to come back to this and talk about it.
All right.
Now, Darren meets with lead investigator Jimmy Patterson, and later Jimmy would recall how the first thing Darren said to him after his boys are dead and his wife is in surgery is how beautiful he thought his wife was and how he really loved her breasts.
What?
Her big, beautiful breasts.
That was his first comment to him?
According to Detective Patterson.
Okay.
According to him, he said he never said a word about the kids. But I'm going to call a little BS on this one.
All right.
Because Patterson never takes a note. Remember?
Yeah.
It's all up in his head.
True.
And also, if you've ever seen an interview with Darren, he loved his wife. And I could see him saying something to the effect, without knowing the extent of her injuries, that her breast augmentation could have been compromised. There are saline bags inside her chest, and she's also been stabbed.
Right.
And they don't know what the extent of her injuries are.
Okay.
But still, Patterson's going to say this. I'm really proud of her breasts.
All right.
Within days of the murders of their boys, Darlie and Darren are both brought into the police station. It takes them over an hour to fill out voluntary statements. Darren repeats what he said before. He heard a scream, rushed downstairs, finds his wife and 2 boys. He tried to save the one boy. Darlie calls 911.
Okay.
Police are going to say that Darlie's story changes again. Quote, man standing at the bottom of my feet, walking away from me. I walked after him, heard glass breaking. I ran toward the utility room and realized there was a big white-handled knife on the floor. Then I realized I had blood all over me. I picked it up and then realized there was blood all over everything. I turned on the light and then started screaming for Darren.
Gotcha.
But again, how do they know her story has changed if no one is recording any of her answers to their questions?
Right.
How do they know?
Yeah.
There are no recordings of this. Now all they have is her written statement.
Yep.
They held the crime scene for 13 days. 13 days. They analyzed everything they could, and I'm going to add to the phrase, to the best of their ability. Because I don't think this police crew was capable of handling this.
Yeah.
If this crime had taken place in a city with lots of homicide experience, like L.A., I think we'd be telling you a different story right now.
Well, and also, when this goes to court, I mean, there's going to be a lot of hearsay.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
And a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Yeah. Okay.
They take the carpet and the kitchen sink because there was blood all over the counter around the kitchen sink, but the sink itself is spotless. And Sergeant Neighbors, another officer who's working the case, thought that this is mighty strange. If someone had taken the effort to clean the sink of blood, why did they do it? And I don't think it was a cleaning. I think what blood was there washed away when she was wetting towels to use as compression on her son's gaping wounds.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
Darlie is as sweet as she can be. Darlie's not a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
She hasn't planned anything.
Well, and in a situation like this, you're not thinking about anything other than, what do? I got to help. I got to,
Oh, that's not what they think.
Yeah, whatever.
Sergeant Neighbor's job was to process blood traces at the crime scene. He says if there was a struggle, the blood spatter would have shown these long, thin lines of blood that were thrown off as Darlie fought off the intruder.
Okay.
But they can't find any of those types of spatters or splatters.
Right.
If Darlie had chased her intruder through the house, the bloodstains would have been in streaks as they fall from her bleeding body as she's moving. They didn't.
Okay.
In the laundry room, where she says she found the knife, there is blood, but those splatters didn't match her story either, according to them. To which I ask, which story?
Yeah.
She's so confused. But that crime scene that they held for 13 days and took numerous photos of was trampled through by officer after officer, EMS, firemen. It's a small town. Everybody came to the crime scene.
Yeah.
They recreate the crime scene and put down white butcher paper to map out where she said she went and if there would be bloody footprints. She said she ran through the crime scene. They had her walk and run, and based on her stride, they could tell that she had walked through the kitchen, that she didn't run, that she hadn't been running. Also, to which I say, I don't think she knew what she was doing, and she already said she didn't start running till she turned on the light and saw that her children were mortally wounded.
Yeah.
They're also interested in Darlie's feet. She doesn't have a scratch on them, no cuts. And if the intruder had smashed the wine glass on the floor and Darlie supposedly ran through the kitchen, why didn't she have any cuts or scrapes on her feet?
True.
Again, I don't think she was thinking with a clear enough head to know the order of anything. Or maybe she did make it through the glass without cutting her feet.
Yeah.
For the police and the DA, for them, the most damning evidence is the blood around the kitchen sink. They do luminol testing, and you can see where there was blood that had been, quote, cleaned up. But from everything I read on the case, she turns on the water and puts the towels in there to wet them.
Yeah.
So it would be washed away.
Yeah, and the other thing, that doesn't hold water, no pun intended, because if there was blood all around the sink, what difference does it make if she tried to wash that? I mean, it doesn't add up.
Well, here's why.
Okay.
Jim Patterson thinks Darlie has stabbed her own children, and then she stood over the sink and cut her own throat and arm.
Okay.
He gets another opinion from one of the attending doctors in the ER who said there's a possibility that she could have cut herself. But those who believe she's innocent say she couldn't have done the damage she did with her left hand. She would have needed to use her right hand. Darlie's right-handed. And how did she cut her neck so close to the carotid artery without hitting it and bleeding out? And again, Darlie is sweet, but she doesn't seem like the type who would know if she was cutting her own throat deep enough.
Right.
I know exactly how deep to cut without killing myself.
Well, let me throw this in there, though, because something you said earlier about her writing a suicide note, things like that. I mean, if she thought maybe she cut it deep enough and then she killed her kids thinking that she was going to die, murder-suicide kind of thing. I mean, is that plausible?
No, they think that she just wanted her children dead.
Okay.
If you can believe that, they think she just wants her kids dead.
All right.
Now, they repeat the luminol process on the sofa, and what they found was a small child's handprint glowing in the dark near the edge where Damon had been stabbed. Now, just like the blood in the kitchen, someone had wiped it away, or had they? Again, loads of people are in and out of this crime scene. What if someone brushed up against the couch and wiped it away?
Right.
There was blood everywhere in that living room, but still, it does not look good for Darlie.
Okay.
Police say nothing is adding up. Darlie said she believed the killer came in and escaped through the garage, and they did find that slit in the screen, but the screen showed no signs of being forcibly pushed in or out, and it easily came off the window. And an intruder could have just taken it off.
Right.
And like I said before, police say that there were no footprints in the mulch, but there is no mulch right there. If you open that window that sits outside the garage or is in the garage,
right,
it leads to a pebbly concrete slab.
Why did they even say there was... Okay.
Yeah. And climbing in and out of this window, which is all the way to the ground, it would be so easy to do it without disturbing anything. This is a large window. Yeah. It's all the way to the ground. You're just basically ducking your head to get in.
Yeah, and if there indeed was an intruder, I mean, he's going to be very quiet and very careful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the whole part about the gate being shut off so tightly, well, the gate was open, and it opened easily. And one person will even testify that it opened into the yard and not out. That's how they knew that it was open. But the fact that they can't prove someone went in or out of that window means someone in the house murdered the children. Now, personally, I think someone came through a different open window or walked right in the front door. That's what I think.
Okay.
They look for drops of blood in the yard and find nothing.
Well, I mean, why would they find blood in the yard?
Well, they have the canine unit there, so they should be able to sniff it out. But they find nothing.
Okay.
They think this assailant is bleeding or has blood on their person after murdering these two children.
Okay.
But this is also a group of law enforcement dudes who are documenting the crime scene, and they're moving things around in the home as they do it. And I am not even kidding. You can see in the crime scene photos where things are moved in the photos from one place to another.
Wow.
That is not how you process a crime scene. My fictional characters get it right better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, according to police, the blood is only found inside the home. But what about this bloody sock?
Yeah.
That really throws a kink in their theory that no one left the house.
Right.
It is 75 yards away from Darlie and Darren's home and in an alleyway by a storm drain. So was somebody trying to throw it down the storm drain hastily?
And whose sock was it, though?
Well, on the sock is the blood of both Damon and Devon, and it's Darren's sock. And they tell police there's a rag basket in the laundry room that sometimes has socks. We have socks laying around in our laundry room because they disappear somehow.
Yeah.
In the family room where Darlie described her struggle, police say they've found very little to corroborate her story. A lampshade was askew. A flower arrangement was on the floor. But how do you know what's real and what's not real? Because they've moved things around while taking these crime scene photos.
Of course, yeah.
So they've moved things around. They're not taking notes. And yet Sergeant Neighbors proclaims, quote, somebody inside this house did this thing. There was no intruder, end quote.
Wow.
What police did find in their search was a knife that would soon be known as knife number 4. It was one of the knives in the butcher block in the kitchen that went with the set, like the white one that was found covered in blood in the utility room.
Gotcha.
Knife number 4 has a fiber on it, a fiber that they say matches the screen that was cut in the garage.
Okay.
The only way it could get back in the block is if someone took it, cut the screen, then placed it back in the block. This is 1996. Today, they would be able to match that fiber perfectly.
Sure.
But back then,
yeah,
I don't know.
It kind of looks like the screen.
Exactly. But what the hell is the motive? Why would she kill 2 of her boys and leave the other one alone upstairs with her husband?
Yeah.
And police and the DA will say it was for money.
I was going to say, well, there's had to have been an insurance policy.
Yeah, it's not much because I'm rolling my eyes because each one of the boys had life insurance policies of $5,000 each.
Yeah.
$5,000 each.
Yeah.
Now, on Sunday, June 9th, 1996, 3 days after their murders, Devon and Damon Routier's funeral takes place. 400 people from this little town show up.
Okay.
When Darlie enters the chapel, she kneels at their side, and according to Detective Frosch, who overheard her, Darlie whispered, quote, I'm sorry, end quote, then wailed, quote, who could have done this to my children, end quote.
Yeah, well, that doesn't say anything.
Well, being a mother is synonymous with feeling guilty.
Yeah.
We never think we do enough, and to me, she's saying, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you.
Hey, when you're not feeling well, I'll rub your back and say, I'm so sorry, babe.
Yeah. What can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do?
It didn't make you sick.
Well, a woman who sometimes cleaned for the Routiers sees Darlie at the funeral. She says, I'm so sorry about the boys. And then she mentions, quote, and now you have this expensive funeral to add to your problems, end quote. And Darlie replied, quote, I'm not worried. I'll get $5,000 for each of the boys, end quote.
Okay.
Now, I'm not disputing that Darlie said it. I'm not. But being crass does not make you a murderer.
Yeah.
And because of these life insurance policies, she was actually able to pay for the boys' funeral. It was over $10,000.
Yeah.
Something that also sat wrong with the Rowlett police, the song they played as the boys were taken from the funeral home to the gravesite. It was Coolio's Gangster's Paradise. And they played it, according to Darren, because it was their favorite song. It was the 2 boys' favorite song.
Yeah.
And they wanted to send them off to their favorite song.
Sure.
I've known other people to do this, adults who have done this. And Detective Patterson and the DA think this is appalling. But you can't put your brand of appropriate grief and their behavior on someone else.
Yeah.
But Jim Patterson and the Rowlett Police Department, they're doing just that.
Wow.
Many of Darlie's relatives and friends remarked that during the funeral, she didn't wipe her eyes because she never cried. And now I'm not judging here because sometimes you're just numb at a funeral. And Darlie was also taking Xanax, which was prescribed for her by her doctor at the time.
Okay.
Understandably so.
Sure.
And I am never going to judge anyone in how they process their grief.
Right.
And the police, if they'd seen a murder or 2, they would know this as well.
Right.
The police haven't arrested anyone, but they can't find any trace of this intruder. The evidence is piling up, but police always look for motive, and Darlie and Darren were in debt up to their eyeballs.
Okay.
Now, while the house is a crime scene, Darlie, Darren, and Drake are staying with her mother, but she needs some of her clothes, and her friend Mercedes Adams agreed a few days after the funeral to go with her to the house.
Okay.
Mercedes believed that Darlie would absolutely lose it when she walked back into her house where her boys were murdered. But instead, according to Mercedes, she said, quote, "Look at this mess. It'll cost us a fortune to fix this shit," end quote. Now, Mercedes Adams said, quote, "Right where her boys were killed, and that's the first thing she said to me. I put my hands on Darlie's shoulders and said, 'Darlie, look me in the eye and tell me you didn't kill the boys.' She looked me in the eye and she said, quote, 'I'm going to get new carpet, new drapes, and fix this room all up,' end quote." I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Now, again, I'm not denying she said it. I'm sure she's still in shock.
Yeah.
The police had torn up her house, and Darlie loved that house. And again, just because you make tactless remarks, it doesn't make you a killer.
Right.
I think she was so disconnected at that moment, she didn't want to think about what had happened there.
Well, and two, let's think about it. If she indeed did plan this and did kill the children, she would be conscious and cognizant of what she's saying. And to say something like that, she's going to know, like I said, if she had planned this and did it on purpose, that it would be taken wrong. Instead, she would say something like, "Oh my God, I can't look at this.
I can't go in there. I'm going to have to tell you where to go get our stuff."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless she's just a cold, heartless person.
Again, trauma's weird.
Yeah.
You can't expect people to act the way you want them to act.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't make her a murderer.
Yep.
Gonna say it a bunch. Meanwhile, back at the police station, here are the unanswered questions. What was the motive? If it's robbery, why's the jewelry there?
Mm-hmm.
Why would an intruder kill children before dispatching the adult who posed a more serious threat? Why would the killer, who so obviously had no scruples about murdering a pair of kids, back off when Darlie wakes up, leaving a witness who can identify him?
Mm-hmm.
Why would he drop the murder weapon on the floor, giving Darlie, his pursuer, a weapon in which to fight back? And why would he have used the Routier's butcher knife in the first place? Because assailants come to their intended victims' premises already armed.
Okay.
And why are there no visible signs of an intruder? Footprints, handprints, drops of blood beyond the house where he made his escape. Well, there is a sock.
Yeah, I was ready to say there is that sock.
We keep forgetting about the sock.
Right. Yeah.
There's more than just that pesky sock 75 yards away from the house. There was an unidentified bloody fingerprint. It did not belong to anyone in the home.
Really?
And police say it doesn't have enough points of reference to be matched. Not yet.
Yeah.
Police and Jim Patterson put a microphone and video surveillance at the gravesite of these two boys. They want to try to catch Darlie confessing to the murders because all they have is circumstantial evidence.
Sure.
That's all they've got.
Right.
On June 14th, 8 days after the boys are murdered, Darren and Darlie decide to hold a long-time planned birthday party for Devon, who was about to turn 7.
Okay.
The invitations had already been sent out before the murders. And Devon loved his birthday. He was getting ready to turn 7. And they wanted to celebrate it for him. They have this 2-hour somber service at the gravesite where her family cried and prayed together. But then at the end, her sister urges her to do something the boys would have liked. She sprays silly string all over the balloon-covered graves, singing happy birthday. And a news crew was there to film it and document it for all the world to see. Now, this tape, only the singing and the silly string, not the 2 hours before with the crying and the praying, will be watched by the jury in this trial 9 times. 9 times.
Wow.
Now, all this so-called happiness and mirth at the gravesite is like pouring gasoline on a smoldering fire for these local police.
Of course.
They cannot believe that she would act this way just a few days after the trauma of her sons being stabbed to death. Now, Darlie's mom has said that you can't use that piece of footage to show anything about Darlie's grief. She's out of her mind, and she doesn't know what she's doing. She would go from laughing to crying. But it made it look like Darlie didn't give a shit. Detective Patterson wants to question Darlie one more time. Darlie has stoked the fire. Patterson's determined to get to the bottom of it. So she goes into the police station, and she's questioned by a man named Bill Parker. He's a master interrogator. And Patterson wants to see if Bill Parker can get her to confess. And for 3 hours, wow. Parker grills her like a cheese sandwich. He accuses her directly of the murder 6 times. 6 times he says, Darlie, you killed your 2 boys. And 5 times she gives the same answer. If I did, I don't remember.
Wow.
But no confession.
Why would she do that?
If I did it, I don't remember. Again, was she drugged?
Wow.
Was she drugged?
That's not a very smart thing to say.
Well, you are right.
Yeah.
There's so many places where Darlie and Darren could have taken another path and they didn't. They don't help themselves very much.
Right.
But at the same time, Darlie thinks there's a man out there. There's a killer out there. And these men are trying to help find him. Detective Patterson still thinks he has enough to convict Darlie, and he arrests her on the spot for the murder of Devon and Damon. Patterson addresses the press, stating that Darlie had been taken into custody and the intruder never existed. They tell the press they will be seeking the death penalty.
Jeez.
So she's on the 10 o'clock news in handcuffs. She's gone from suspect to accused murderer. From mom to suspect to accused murderer.
Wow.
Darlie's in-laws get rid of the state-supplied attorney, the one that's assigned to Darlie. They know they're going to need a bigger gun.
Right.
They mortgage their homes in order to get a man named Doug Mulder, an attorney that used to be with the district attorney's office. Mulder puts together this crack team, including a retired FBI investigator, but he gets his $50,000 retainer and heads off on a Hawaiian vacation, according to one source that I read. Mulder was known as a criminal defense attorney who won. He always won. But I think he was a little too confident in his own abilities during this trial.
Gotcha.
And he didn't worry enough about the media and the mob mentality. Darlie being arrested for murdering her boys is just 1 year after Susan Smith had the entire nation praying for her when she murdered her 2 sons by allowing her car to go into a lake while they were strapped into their car seats.
Yep.
That's in South Carolina.
Yep.
The timing is not good for Darlie because they see her and think she's just another Susan Smith.
Yeah.
Jury selection begins October 16th, 1996 in Kerrville, change of venue. And it took basically a whole month to pull the jury together.
Okay.
On November 14th, they finally had 7 women and 5 men who would decide Darlie's fate. On January 6, 1997, the trial begins. She's only on trial for the murder of Damon because he's the youngest, and if convicted, she could be put to death. And they're holding the capital murder indictment on Devon's death in limbo so they can use it as a second chance in case Darlie is acquitted or gets a life sentence.
Sure.
Prosecutor Greg Davis opened by saying, quote, Darlie Routier is a self-centered, materialistic woman cold enough to murder 2 precious children, end quote. Defense attorney Mulder in turn said, Darlie was a caring mother who, like any other housewife, suffered personal problems and concern. She was, he said, quote, caught up in a maelstrom of fate. And the state wants you to believe she became a psychotic killer in the blink of an eye? Well, folks, that's just absurd, end quote.
Right.
The medical examiner's office explained these defensive wounds on Damon's body, saying that he had struggled with his attacker before he died.
Okay.
The coroner said there were differences between the kids' wounds and Darlie's hesitation wounds, saying that Darlie inflicted these on herself. Officer Waddell, remember him? He was the first guy on the scene.
Right.
The jury members got to see the crime scene photographs, which showed the gruesome detail of the aftermath of the murders. He was also just like a deer caught in the headlights when he arrived. And I'm saying that because, once again, if you listen to this 911 call, well, just listen, because he has no idea what to do when he arrives.
Okay.
The paramedics gave this heart-wrenching story of Damon passing away. The second paramedic, who was in charge of Darlie, said that she didn't ask about the condition of her children one time on the way to the hospital. As the trial goes on, the prosecution rips Darlie apart. Investigator James Cron told of his search of a possible pursuer's flight through the house, through the laundry room and the garage. And Cron said, quote, after my initial walkthrough, I thought someone in the family had committed the murders and staged the scene. The further I got into my investigation, the more convinced I became, end quote. It took him 30 minutes to come to his conclusion.
He's pretty good.
30 minutes.
Oh, God. Wow, he could have a weekly TV show.
Yeah, well, just wait. I'm going to talk about him a little bit later.
Okay.
The blood expert, Tom Bevel, who got down on the floor, he showed the velocity and direction of the blood found on Darlie's nightshirt.
Okay.
He said Darlie's son's blood is found on the nightshirt on the back. It was literally sprayed there while Darlie is swinging her arms up and down, stabbing and slicing. And I thought this was really interesting because in order for him to have this blood spray, the way he's saying the pattern is, she would have nearly had to do a back bend to get the cast off.
Gotcha.
Like, he has his arm so far behind his head to do this.
Okay.
Finally, FBI agent Al Brantley, he discredits the idea of the burglar or a rapist. And he just talked about motive, that a thief would have taken Darlie's jewelry.
Yeah.
Quote, someone who knew these children very well murdered them, end quote. This is all circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
And they're really taking a hard line, right?
Yeah.
Then the jury is shown the videotape taken by the news crew on Devon's 7th birthday, the silly string. They didn't show the first 2 hours where Darlie was crying, only the gum chewing, silly string spraying, and smiling Darlie.
Right.
The prosecution tells the jury that Darlie staged the whole kit and caboodle. The kids go to sleep. She takes one knife, cuts open the screen, then she puts it back. Then she gets out the big knife where she proceeds to stab her children. One twice, the other 6 times. Then she takes one of her husband, Darren's, socks, soaks it in the children's blood, plants it in the alleyway behind the house. Then she cuts herself and calls 911. I'm going to go through that one more time.
Yeah, well, I mean,
a little bit later.
I guess that's plausible.
It's really not.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you why in just a little bit.
All right.
Doug Mulder, her defense attorney, and his team, they tried to save Darlie. He brought in friends, neighbors, relatives. These people knew Darlie. They could vouch for her character. The Reverend David Rogers, who officiated the funeral, said that Darlie was grieving appropriately. A friend of Darlie's talked about how kind Darlie was, how she came to her because she knew she too had lost a child. Mm-hmm. And Karen Neal, remember her? The husband drove Darren to the hospital and she watched over Drake. She said Darlie's grief was real.
Yeah.
Then Darren took the stand. And this guy, he admitted they had financial problems and that Darlie was truly devastated by their boys' deaths. He held back tears when he talked about the morning of the murder, him giving CPR to Devon.
Okay.
Quote, Darlie was running back and forth, getting wet towels going, oh my God, he's dead, end quote. I screamed at Officer Waddell and Darlie tried to get him to go to the garage. All 3 of us were in shock, end quote.
Right.
Dr. Lisa Clayton took the stand on Darlie's behalf, saying that her trauma had clouded her memory. And then finally on January 29th, the last witness was a surprise. It was Darlie. Mulder tried to talk her out of taking the stand, but Darlie would not hear of it. She wanted to be on that witness stand.
Right.
She went through her life story. She dedicated herself to motherhood, to these 3 children, about her domestic ups and downs. She read excerpts from her diary to show she was a loving mom and not just one who suffered from postpartum depression.
Right. Yeah.
She explained that the silly string was brought that day by her sister and not her. And she remembered the night of the murder, saying if her story changed, it was just because she couldn't remember it at the time. Yeah, I don't know if that made a whole lot of sense, Darlie, but okay. But when the prosecution started cross-examination, Darlie just crumbled. They wouldn't accept amnesia. They wouldn't accept her alibi. They wouldn't accept a word she told them. It was just an inquisition.
Yeah, that's what they get paid for.
Yeah. Why did you tell one policeman one thing and tell a different policeman something else? Why didn't your dog bark?
Right.
Why was the kitchen sink cleaned of all its blood?
Mm-hmm.
Why had you lied and lied and lied? And all that was left of Darlie when they were finished was just a sobbing heap. And she really couldn't account for anything.
Right.
They just twisted her in knots.
Yeah.
And I want to say, if you've ever watched a real trial, it's tough. When someone is cross-examining you, you really have to be on your game.
Yeah.
You have to be careful of what you say. You have to wait, see if anybody's going to object. Darlie wasn't ready for any of that. She was not ready for that.
Well, and that's exactly why defense attorneys won't let their clients get up on the stand.
Take the stand,
Yeah.
and she insisted.
Yeah.
But here's what the prosecution needs the jury to believe. She stabs her children. She stages this crime scene. She takes off running 75 yards away to drop a sock with blood of both boys on it. She runs 75 yards back to the house. That's a football field and a half, people.
Yeah.
She slits her own throat, makes a gash in her arm, cuts her fingers, and calls 911 in hysterics. 3 minutes later, the Rowlett police officer arrived and EMS 4 minutes after that. And one of the boys is still alive?
Yeah.
How's that possible?
Right.
After 7 hours of deliberation, the jury on February 1st found Darlie Lynn Routier guilty of the murder of her son, Damon Christian Routier. 3 days later, she gets the death penalty.
Wow.
Here's some important things to know. I've heard the judge was about to retire and wanted to go out with a bang. He did. I've also read accounts that he fell asleep through parts of the trial. Don't know if that's true or not. I do know the transcript that the jury got for review contained 33,000 errors and omissions.
Wow.
So much so that the court reporter didn't feel comfortable signing off on it.
Gee whiz.
And the audio tapes they heard to help make their decision were incomplete. The jury was never shown the police footage of what happened at the grave site before the silly string, and they watched it 9 times. Also, who called this news crew?
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems like maybe the people who have 24-hour surveillance might have done that.
Yep.
Were they trying to make Darlie look bad to the press?
Yeah.
One juror came forward after to admit he was peer pressured into voting guilty. This was on a 2020 investigation. He claimed he never saw the police surveillance version of Devon's graveside birthday party that showed Darlie and her family grieving. And there were jurors who stepped forward as well who said this would have made a difference.
Yeah. Man.
Barbara Davis, who wrote Precious Angels and who once believed in Darlie's guilt, has changed her mind since reviewing these latest developments as well. She has said, look, there's this latent bloody fingerprint found on the Routier kitchen counter, and nobody has done anything about it. So let's talk about the bloody fingerprint.
Okay.
According to 2 New York City police fingerprint experts, the print did not match Darlie or Darren, and therefore lends new credence into the intruder theory.
Okay.
And on July 25th, 2001, Darlie's lawyers filed an appeal.
Okay.
This fingerprint's going to be known as 85J. In July of 2002, Darlie's attorneys argued that prosecutors should turn over evidence for new forensic testing. One item requested was the nightshirt Darlie had on at the time of the murders. Her attorneys want to conduct tests they hope will indicate that her wounds were not self-inflicted. And defense lawyers also want to test the murder knife and the window screen and the carpet samples. And they want to put that fingerprint through the FBI database.
There you go.
Because before they've always said there's not enough points of reference. Well, guess what? Time has passed. There are enough points of reference.
Yeah.
By this time, Darren Routier has also admitted that he looked for somebody to burglarize the family home to benefit from an insurance scam, but he planned to have that burglary happen when the family was not at home, and he never acted on it.
Gotcha.
Don't know what to tell you about that.
Yeah.
Also part of her appeal is this shoddy job the police did on the scene. They walked through it over and over. They improperly tagged items. They didn't have the medical examiner even fingerprint the boys before they were buried.
Really?
You can't even tell if the boys' fingerprints are in the house because they didn't fingerprint the boys.
Jeez.
But this print, this 85J, it's an adult fingerprint. All of Darlie's attorneys, all they want, they just want it to be run through the FBI system because, again, now it has enough points of reference. Right. Her attorneys also file a motion of discovery and ask for DNA testing of the sock. And a federal judge, the federal judge in this court, Judge Ferguson, he actually granted the defense and Darlie's appeal to have that done.
Okay.
To run the fingerprint through the FBI database and the sock through DNA.
Gotcha.
But the state of Texas has said no.
Why?
So a federal judge has said yes, and the state of Texas has said no.
Why would they say no?
Why would they? Darlie's team has now waited 13 years for them to release all of that evidence. And that could be the piece that shows that there was another person in the house that night.
Yeah.
Now, before I wrap this up, I want to talk about the police reports of all the suspicious activity in the area on the night of the murders and before and after.
Okay.
On June 11th, 1996, Angel Rickles calls the Rowlett Police Department to tell them that on the night of June 6th, the night the boys were murdered, an unidentified man tried to enter her home at 1:30 in the morning. She's watching TV. She hears someone trying to get into her house through a door. She hears something and turns on her porch light to see what's happening. And she can see through the peephole 2 men, one wearing a dark jogging suit. The other was shorter and stockier.
Okay.
They ran from her house in the direction of Darlie and Darren's home. She does not call the police, but she goes back to watching TV, and a short time later, she hears tapping coming from the bedroom window at the front of her house. Angel looks through the blinds and sees two men again. She turned off the bedroom light, and they leave. She didn't call the police, but she didn't go to bed. Neither would I, Angel. Yeah. And she wouldn't call the police for another 5 days.
Really? I wonder why she wouldn't call the police.
She said that there's nothing they could do. What were they going to do? Yeah. That was her quote. I'm paraphrasing, but that was her quote.
Okay.
She also said there was a dark vehicle parked outside.
Okay.
Now, the report of the break-in coincides with the time frame in which Darlie Routier claimed an unknown person entered her own home. And Rickles described the first incident occurring at 1:30 a.m. The men leave the area and return at approximately 2 a.m. And it was after 2 a.m. that Angel described seeing the vehicle. And these are time estimates, but they all occurred before Darlie makes the 911 call.
Okay.
Yeah, because that call took place at 2:30.
Right.
And the Rickles family home is a half a mile from Darlie and Darren's house. It would take 9 minutes to walk from one home on Miami Drive to the other on Eagle Drive.
Okay.
On June 6th, Sally Bingham reported to police. She's a neighbor of the Routier family. She described being awake at 1 to 1:30 in the morning. This is when the murders are taking place. And Bingham said that she kept seeing a car lights driving through the neighborhood. And her bedroom had a bay window. And the vehicle made several trips down the street before she finally got up and looked outside to see what it was.
Really?
She sees a white vehicle.
Okay.
The other person has seen a dark vehicle.
Gotcha.
On June 7th, Betty Young reported that her son saw a suspicious-looking man in the morning wearing blue jeans, a white T-shirt, and a black cap. He was also carrying a knapsack. And the sighting took place at the Rowlett vet clinic 3 miles from the Routier home. There was an additional lead sheet describing a man fitting the same description, carrying a backpack near I-30 and Dowell Rock at 5 a.m., June 6th, just 2.5 miles from the Routier's home. Corey Keith lived in the Routier's neighborhood, and he contacted the police on June 7th to report that an incident had occurred just the week before the murders. He described coming home at 2:30, 3 a.m., somewhere in between there, and seeing an older-style minivan driving slowly down Eagle Drive. He also described the occupants of the van as, quote, shining lights on houses, end quote.
Really?
So now we've had 2 reports of a minivan that's white and 2 reports of 2 dark cars. And there are reports to the Rowlett police of suspicious activity on the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and the 17th.
And none of this was ever brought up?
Nope. All about suspicious vehicles in the area and the neighborhood of Darlie and Darren.
Wow.
But why would you bring it up? There's no reason to. Somebody inside the house killed those children. Yeah.
Judged and juried before that even went to court.
I mean, it's even months later that there are other people who are in the neighborhood who see other suspicious guys just walking down the street. It's just all weird.
Yeah.
You know, wearing the baseball hat and wearing all black and wearing the blue jeans. It's the same guys that people are reporting over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah, because this area is more of an affluent type of residential area?
It is absolutely an affluent area. Yeah. So there's money.
Okay.
There's gold in them there hills. Yep. So there's so many reports of suspicious activity the night and the days leading up and after Devon and Damon are murdered, but it didn't seem to matter to the police and it didn't matter to the state of Texas because they are not allowing the DNA testing.
Right.
Even though the federal judge has said, yeah, I'm granting this evidence request for this sock and run this fingerprint through the FBI database.
That's incredible that the state would not want to
block it?
Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense.
But doesn't it? Think about it.
Why?
They railroaded this woman.
Yeah.
Why would they want to be proven otherwise?
That's true, but geez, I mean, you're responsible for somebody being in prison for the rest of their life or possibly being executed.
There was a man who walked through that crime scene and in 30 minutes said,
I know exactly what happened here.
I know exactly what happened. Jeez. I'm going to talk about him in just a second, so hang on. Right. In 2011, Darlie and Darren divorced. Don't really know the reason behind it. All the interviews I've seen of Darren says that he will always love Darlie. There are people who believe strongly on both sides of this, that she murdered her children and then injured herself, that she's completely innocent. The truth is out there. One thing for sure, I don't think the crime scene unit did a very good job, and the man who's within 30 minutes of walking through the scene said it was an inside job. James Cron?
Yeah.
Well, a man named Stephen Chaney was wrongfully imprisoned in the late 80s for 25 years. And guess who was on that expert crime scene investigation?
Well, let me just take a wild guess. James Cron?
James Cron. Yeah. Cron has no academic qualifications.
Wow.
He's got nothing to be an expert. He was just a guy who started out in 1958 in the fingerprint department of the police department.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And after 58 years, he's an expert on solving homicides.
Jeez.
You can watch the 2020 investigations from 1997 where they present him with evidence and he says, and I quote, "I don't care," end quote.
Wow. That's who you want running the law enforcement.
Yeah,
Somebody who doesn't care.
He's not a forensic scientist in any way. He's just a guy who's going to walk through the crime scene and say, well, this is what happened.
Wow.
So what is the truth?
Yeah.
Did the good old boy network put Darlie in prison because they couldn't find another killer and someone needed to pay for this crime? Right. I say test everything. Yeah. Run DNA on everything. Yeah. Test the fingerprint. Yeah. It's actually ridiculous.
Yeah.
If you're so sure she's a killer, then what's the big deal?
Exactly.
If she is, then let her rot in hell for murdering her 2 sons. But if she isn't, that's another thing entirely.
Right.
Darlie does not have an execution date because the federal judge has granted the DNA testing. She's been waiting for 27 years on death row.
Amazing.
But that is the story of Darlie Routier, innocent or guilty. And that's all I have to say about that. Hey, Hitched to Homicide listeners. This is Chris Calvert. I love doing research and writing about real crimes, but I also love writing about fictional people who commit horrible atrocities. When you're ready to take a break from true crime for fictional crime, go to chriscalvert.com, where you'll find all my books, including some free ones to get you started. Jane Doe is one badass chick who quietly hunts terrorists in the United States. The Sex and Lies books are all FBI and CIA cases with a little romance on the side. And coming summer 2022, Book 10 in the series, Sex, Lies, and Rock and Roll, releases. You can find all of these books everywhere, and if you like to listen instead of read, you can find them all on Audible. So go grab a free book or take a listen. I love all the characters I've written. I've given them pain, ruined their lives, make them suffer, and maybe even throw in a heroic death. Or maybe they live to fight another day. Check it all out at chriscalvert.com, and thanks for being a listener of Hitched to Homicide.
Wow. Well, I don't know how to feel about this. There's part of you that say, well, it kind of points toward her, but then 90% of it doesn't point toward her.
She didn't help herself at any turn.
No.
That's for sure. No. But I think she got railroaded a little bit.
Well, yeah, obviously.
And again, it's been 27 years. Yeah. Test everything. Yeah. Test it all.
Well, it's like you said, if you're so sure that she's guilty, then just go ahead and have a test.
Then what's the big deal?
Yeah. Whatever.
And if she is guilty, again, let her rot in hell. But if she's not, what are you hiding from?
Yeah.
I know.
Well, let's go from the opposite of rotting in hell to being really stupid with a little bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right, our first one, I'm going to call Birds of a Feather.
Okay. I love how you name these, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the fun of it. And you have to admire the initiative of some criminals.
Okay.
In Brazil, they tried to smuggle a cell phone into a prison using a...
Cell phone.
Nope, a pigeon. According to the Orange News, the pigeon got off to a good start, clearing the prison wall with ease, but then the weight of the phone became too much, and the pigeon plummeted to the ground right at the feet of a prison guard.
What they do? Like duct tape it to him?
Here's what happened. Officers rushed outside and found the inmate's girlfriend and accomplice. Wait, here it comes, with another pigeon.
Oh, a second one just in case?
Well, it had a birdie backpack attached to its wings, filled with chips, cash, and an extra battery.
How big is the pigeon? Hold all this.
The two were charged with attempted smuggling and cruelty to animals.
Yeah, cruelty to animals.
All right. Number 2, I'm calling this The Toilet Don't Lie.
Oh, gosh. Do I even want to hear this one?
Well, I'm going to set this up. This is kind of unrelated, but yet it is. A New Jersey condominium complex was requiring all dog owners to supply a DNA sample from their pooch so it could be matched to a dog due left and others to clean up in the complex.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was becoming a big problem. But according to KFOR TV in Oklahoma City, the same principle works for humans. The story in a nutshell, okay?
Oh, my gosh.
Someone broke into this family's home and stole all the valuables.
Okay.
The culprit then began vandalizing the home by dumping out laundry detergent and using the bathroom with no regard for aim or cleanliness.
Well, when you said dumping out.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Ready onto it. Yes. Okay.
The report says someone who used the bathroom, quote, left poop and toilet paper all over the floor, unquote. Bright-minded police officers used some of the fecal matter to test for DNA, and they got a match. Charles Williams was charged with first-degree burglary this week.
Can I just say that this is a police department that is willing to test the DNA of somebody's excrement?
Oh, my gosh.
And Darlie can't get a sock tested.
Yeah, exactly.
In a murder trial.
Where's the justice?
What is wrong with this country?
All right, next. I'm calling this, that was my twin.
Oh, okay.
Yep. According to the Hunterdon County Democrat, police say Harold Williams of Plainfield went into a Route 22 ShopRite on August 29th and walked out with $321 of shampoo and razors without paying.
Well, razors are expensive.
Yeah, how do you can carry that much? That's $321. Jeez. Later that very same day, about 6 p.m., he walks back in and applies for a job.
Well, I feel like I know your products well.
Manager,
so I'd like a job.
Yeah. Manager Paul Lesperance recognized him earlier and called the cops. I wonder if he was still filling out the application when the police walked in. Anyway, he was arrested, processed, and taken to the Somerset County Jail as he was unable to pay the bail. I suppose they wouldn't accept shampoo and razors in place of money.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
If he'd brought some conditioner,
Yeah.
maybe somebody would have helped him out.
And finally, I love this one. Dishonesty is the best policy to getting caught.
See, I just don't know if we can top the poop story, but keep going.
No, this will top it. This is very funny. Two buddies are road tripping to a Grateful Dead show, and to make the drive more interesting, they each ate a dose of LSD.
Okay. Are they driving?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They're rolling along the interstate and start to trip out. They're laughing and having fun driving along when suddenly they notice a cop car with its lights on in the rearview mirror. They started freaking out, okay?
I bet.
The driver repeatedly remarks to himself and his friends, okay, I'll just admit to speeding, I'll get a ticket, and it'll all be okay. He rehearses the plan out loud until the cop knocks on the window.
Okay.
And then says to the cop, quote, I'm really sorry, officer. I know I was speeding. I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. I was going too fast, et cetera, et cetera. The befuddled cop looks at him and says, well, that's all good and well, but you were only doing 10 miles an hour. They were promptly arrested, and the rest is history.
Oh, there was some drug testing that went on.
Bless their hearts.
Moral of the story, wait till you get to the Grateful Dead concert before you drop your acid.
Oh, my gosh.
No, I am not saying do drugs.
No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
That was a joke.
Not at all.
Don't email me. I'm going to get enough emails this week.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you have a bless your heart or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing, you can go to hitchedtohomicide.com. There's a pull-down menu. You can also suggest a case, just like the one we did today. Yep. That's my amazing husband out there.
That's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.